BATRA'S burning question this week on the campaign test of leadership.
With an interesting choice of who he's campaigning with. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me is Brian Lilly. Brian, you've been covering the campaign and the election for us wall to wall. We've got a great team of Toronto Sun folks that have been bringing you all the news. But what has emerged on the campaign trail this week, as I said, was tests of leadership. Let's start with the Liberal leader, Mark Carney, when it was brought to light that one of his candidates, Paul Chang, had suggested that a conservative candidate, Joe Tay, could be basically kidnapped, taken to a Chinese consulate, and whoever takes him there would get the bounty that the CCP has put out on Joe Tay's head. When all of this had been brought to light, Mark Carney still stood by this candidate. What a failure
Yeah,
of
that was
leadership.
ridiculous.
Yeah, it shouldn't take you more than 5 seconds to say, you know what, you encourage people to take someone and hand them over to a hostile foreign government that has recently killed Canadians, that has kidnapped and used as hostage leverage to Canadian diplomats in the past. It shouldn't take you long to say, I don't think you're a good fit. You're not Taco Bell material. We're going to pass on you. It took Mark Carney 4 days. This broke last Friday. It really picked up steam online over the weekend. That's when I noticed about it and wrote about it. I think I first saw an inkling of it Friday late afternoon after Carney had already spoken to the media and about the Trump tariffs, his favorite topic. And then Saturday,
Well, it's his only
nothing from
topic.
Carney, nothing from Carney Sunday. Monday morning, he was asked 6 times. I was standing about 10 to 15 feet away from him at an event in Woodbridge, north of Toronto. 6 times he's asked, and he defends Paul Chang to the hilt. And then at 11:55 on March 31st, I think he did it at that time so that it wouldn't come out in the morning and people think it's an April Fool's joke. Chang decides to resign, and then Carney figures we shouldn't talk about this anymore. C'est fini, ça suffit.
So wait, was it Chang that resigned on his own, or was he pushed by Mark Carney? Because so far it looked like Mark Carney has his back, which is ridiculous. Like, really, we're talking about giving up Canadian citizen to the communist regime for the possible execution, and we're not talking about accusation of murder or anything like that. So really, we're gonna let some politician say that we should send Canadians to China. Like, that's ridiculous. And like I said, 20 years ago, even if it was rumored that he said it, he would resign the next day. And here you have Mark Carney pretty much defending him and not reacting to this. It was ridiculous. I didn't understand how it's possible.
Point final, as he loves to do. That was a failure of a test of leadership. Compare that to Pierre Poilievre, who they've had some candidate problems as well. But if somebody pops up like the guy in Windsor, or there's another guy in BC right now, problems that the vetting team didn't pick up on, boom, you're gone.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's how it should be, right? First of all, everyone who is a member of that political party is representing the political party. And if, in this case, Liberals were elected by people, I know it was a minority government, but still, elected by people, they're supposed to represent the people. So now the person, the Chang, is representing not only Liberals, but people who elected him. And it's like, really, that's not what Canada's about. Like, you should take care of your own, right? And this politician's telling you something completely different, that he pretty much doesn't care about Canadians, and he's willing to send them for execution to the different country. And somehow Mark Carney had his back. Like, how is that possible? Like, in this case, I'm Pierre Poilievre that did the right thing. Like, if someone missteps, someone from your political party makes such a big mistake, just get rid of him. Because you can't have this person represent your interests, represent your party, represent Canadians.
Yeah, the Conservatives have had to fire 4 candidates, but it
Here you
was
go.
decisively done as soon as something came to light and was brought forward. They were gone, and so that's such a difference in how Carney handled it and versus how Polyev handled it. And you were even there. You got video and audio of.
Sorry, one more thing. Like in your job, at your work, if you make something that's like pretty much gross misconduct, that puts the company in a bad light, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to fire you straight away. And being politician is work, it's job. It's the same thing. There shouldn't be any privilege. Like, you made a mistake. You put your political party into the bad light. You're done. Go. Bye. Somehow conservatives understand that. But liberals don't. And that's just proving my point that for the Liberal Party, the idea of being servant to the people who elected you, that you're representing people, that idea is somehow lost. Like, they think they're above the normal population. And it's ridiculous. That's how it feels to me. That's how they feel. I'm not saying that's 100% how they feel, right? But that's how it looks. It just looks like they feel like they're better, like they're above the normal issues, right?
Carney's rigorous defense of Paul Chang
Yeah.
before he ultimately resigned.
And world of difference. The Conservatives these are flash in the pan local stories that, yes, will bother them, but they're done that day. And if Mark Carney had done the same thing, come out Saturday morning and said, I've seen what's there, I've seen what Paul Chang has said since, and this is unacceptable. Instead, we had days and days of regular media coverage. It was picked up by the Sunday chat shows, at least by CTV, on Question Period Sunday morning. It was front page of the Toronto Sun. It was front page on Sunday. It was front page on the Globe, I believe, on Monday. This thing picked up steam. And then by the time he did it, people were saying, no, you don't get credit for this.
Oh, yeah,
he resigned
of course.
after you had defended him vigorously, and only resigned after the RCMP admitted they were looking in to see whether the guy's actions had broken several different sections of the law. So
it's crazy.
You've got days of bad media coverage, partly driven by the fact that Carney was hiding from the media on Saturday and Sunday, wouldn't talk to anyone despite having events going on. But
Ridiculous.
Days of bad media coverage, that's what campaigns try to avoid. That every campaign wants to avoid that because it takes you off your message of the day, whether it is tariffs or Carney on Monday was trying to talk about his housing plan, which is to build a new bureaucracy, by the way, to build houses for you. One word not mentioned anywhere in his plan, ownership or buying. The only time that a homeowner or a property owner is mentioned is that if a property owner sells a multi-unit development to a co-op or the government or a land trust, some form of like non-capital capitalism ownership, then you will get a tax credit. It's the only time that home ownership is mentioned in Mark Carney's housing plan. And what do young people want to be doing? Buying homes. So maybe it's good for him that no one was paying attention, but he was knocked off his message for several days.
Well, and then after he gets out of the mess of talking about this insanity that Paul Chang said about the Conservative candidate, then he trips into this whole idea that there will be basically no pipelines built in this country. And for just for context, for months now.
Okay, this is ridiculous. Because obviously, Carney wants to keep the Bill C-69, which prevents from building any new pipelines, right? But you remember that he was head of the investment firm Brookwell, something like that. Originally, they had headquarters in Toronto, and then when they found out that President Trump will win the election, they moved it to New York to escape from the tariffs, right? Well, his investment firm right now purchased one of the biggest pipelines in the US. And yet he's still refusing to revoke this bill C-69 here in Canada. Like, how is that good for Canada? Literally, like this person, I don't know what are his interests, but it doesn't seem to align with the interests of the normal Canadians or the interests of the whole country, right? Like, I understand that he's not CEO of that investment firm anymore, but you're not the CEO for what, 4 months now? You want to tell me that the investment firm that apparently was all about environment here in Canada will completely change, and right now they're gonna buy pipelines and you have nothing to do with that? I don't know. That's very sketchy to me.
Years now, we've been saying with this ongoing issue of tariffs, which we're going to get into in a moment, but this ongoing issue of tariffs, Brian, we're saying we need to find new markets. We need to sort of extricate ourselves from the United States as our number one trading partner. We need to look at other parts of the world. We need to look at Europe and whatnot.
Exactly.
Expand.
And the tariffs right now helped us incredibly because, look, President Trump put the tariffs on Europe as well. Europe has an infrastructure to transport the goods between Europe and US, right? Who's on the same continent? Who's just few thousand miles away from all of these ports in the US? Canada. Do you really think that there's no chance of making a good deal between Canada and Europe? And again, pipelines. If we build new pipelines, like there was a video that we would be able to make about $100 million a day just thanks to this pipeline and exporting the oil to the Europe. And again, like I said before, exporting oil to Europe means Europe will be less dependent on Russia. That means that Europe will not gonna buy oil from Russia, and Russia won't have as much money to fund the war. I don't know how much it would help, but everything's good, right? And it's not just a pipeline, but liquid natural gas as well, right? LNG. Guess who's buying natural gas from Russia? Europe. So not only that we would be more self-reliant, Europe will be less reliant on Russia, which is good in every case, right? And no one's saying that we can't have any trade deal with the US. But who says that we should have only one trade deal? Who says that we should depend only on the US like we did this past 10 years under the Liberals government? So yeah, like tell me what's the long-term plan for the Liberals? Because right now they're basing the whole election on President Trump, but what's going to happen once you deal with these tariffs?
And Canada's trading partnerships globally. And then in the meantime, this conversation's happening, and then Carney says that he's going to not repeal Bill C-69. And for context, C-69 has basically halted every development project in this country.
Yeah, not just pipelines, mines, industrial projects, everything. Right. It's billed the No New Pipelines bill, but it stops everything.
And so he gets out of one mess, and then he jumps into another one. And I'm not sure though if that one has traction. I mean, it certainly speaks to people that would support Liberals, but isn't that all just about Quebec, vote-rich Quebec, where they basically said no pipelines will ever be built there?
So let me put it in context for everyone. One of the ways that we can build Canada's economy, make it stronger, more resilient in light of the tariffs and the other economic threats that emanate from Washington, from Donald Trump's decision to try and change the global trading order, his decision to revamp and restructure the American economy, we need to be able to respond rather than left behind. And that doesn't mean retaliate. We need to change how our economy works. And there appeared to be a consensus around, okay, we need to get serious now, build oil and gas pipelines so that we can get our product to
Yep,
the West
we
Coast
do.
and export it to Asia. We need to build west to east pipelines so that Canadians stop importing US oil, use our own, so that we can export these products to Europe. That seemed to be a consensus. And in Western Canada, Mark Carney has talked as if he would build pipelines. He didn't explicitly say it, but he used words to make it sound like it. This is one thing you have to be very careful with Carney. He's precise in his language, and he uses that in a way to make you think he'll do one thing when really he's not saying that at all. So he made it sound like that in Western Canada.
You don't have to go far, right? Carbon tax. And if this tells you something, do you really think that if he refuses to repeal or revoke this C-69 bill that prevents building of any pipelines, coal mines, and all of it, pretty much prevents improving our economy, do you really think he's not gonna bring the carbon tax back? Because again, he didn't get rid of the carbon tax, he just made it zero. Like the law is still there, the bill is still there. He can literally one day after election be like, okay, carbon tax is back. And it doesn't have to go through the parliament, through anything, because it's still there. It's just zero right now, but it's still there. And if you look at his behavior towards the new pipelines, really? Do you really think he's going to keep it zero?
He talks about national trade corridors that make it sound like, oh, that's like the Poilievre plan that would do, have hydro lines and pipelines going through a national infrastructure corridor. No, he's not talking about that. And then he goes to Quebec and is asked about a pipeline in Quebec where there's still strong opposition. He says, oh, no, I would never impose anything on Quebec. No, if you don't want it, you don't have to have it, which will kill any Energy East style pipeline. So Carney is trying to play both sides. He talks about making Canada an energy superpower in conventional and clean energy. Well, he only ever talks about investments in clean energy, maybe because we really are already a conventional energy superpower. By the way, he doesn't use terms like oil and gas, he uses conventional energy. He doesn't want to utter the word pipeline, never doesn't want to utter the words oil and gas. And so he was asked directly about C-69 because Pierre Poilievre had said he will repeal it and he will change a lot of things to make it so we can export these products and become the richest country on earth. And Carney asked straight up, says, to answer your question directly, we will not repeal Bill C-69, which the Supreme Court has already ruled is largely unconstitutional. There's a small section that stands, and the rest was declared ultra vires Parliament, out of Parliament's jurisdiction. The Liberals are still trying to hold on to this bill, despite a Supreme Court reference case. They're waiting for someone to challenge it directly through another court process. The court said it's unconstitutional. They're not standing for that. They're basically challenging the court system by this. All this talk about Donald Trump not respecting judicial independence.
Do you remember how I said that somehow I feel like liberals feel like they're above normal people, that there's something better? Well, look, they don't adhere what the court says. Like, come on, dude. Really? And again, it's not in the best interest of Canadians, this Bill C-69.
Look at the Trudeau-Carney Liberals.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's a whole lot of context there. But Carney's plan will not make Canada richer. He wants to keep going along the lines we're going. He wants to invest in a lot of wind and solar and clean energy and perhaps hydrogen. And build you tiny little.
So basically, keeping the same policies that we've had from the Trudeau government for the last 9 years. So
it's not
unfair to say that you vote for Carney, you're going to get the same Trudeau policies. All right, let's move on. And meanwhile, Pierre Poilievre, Conservative leader, visiting all what we would consider the battleground provinces out in Atlantic Canada, Ontario, out in British Columbia. He's getting big crowds on the ground. Certainly the enthusiasm factor is a huge thing for Conservative voters. The challenge, though, not necessarily translating into the polls per se, but big crowds in places, Brian, that Conservative support hasn't been there in the past. Maybe that notion of time for change still is resonating in the face of all the tariff threats. So let's sort of pivot to that part of the conversation. President Donald Trump called it Liberation Day. Everybody, the world bracing for impact. Canada didn't see the huge, massive tariffs that we were anticipating, and that many politicians were scaring us and telling us that were coming. We certainly still have the ones on aluminum and steel. Those still exist, but the USMCA seems to have insulated Canada from much of what President Trump was saying on Liberation Day. Brian, does that take the wind out of the sails of the liberal scare tactics?
To a degree, it does. Look, aluminum and steel are still there. There are tariffs that came in on the question of fentanyl and the border and all of that apply to goods not covered by Kuzma or USMCA, whatever you want to call it, the trade deal. Anything covered by that has an exemption. So they're not being tariffed for now. There could be auto tariffs coming down the road, but right now, that's not happening. Not for Canadian-made vehicles, not for Canadian-made parts at this point. That could change. But one of the things that Howard Lutnick, Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary, told Premier Ford and Dominic LeBlanc and the officials that were down there a few weeks ago is after this April 2nd tariff liberation day, they wanted to start moving towards renegotiating trade deals with key partners, and Canada was at the top of the list. Right now, we're kind of stuck because we're in the middle of a federal election. I know they like dealing with Doug Ford, but he can't negotiate a trade deal for the whole country. We've got to have a new prime minister. And so that's where that stands. In terms of the enthusiasm gap in voters, older voters, the polling would seem to show, are leaning towards Carney, and the driving, motivating factor is Donald Trump. In fact, it's two groups. It's voters 55 plus, but also women. Women are much more concerned about Trump and the tariff factor than men are. It's not, I'm not saying it's 100% one and zero on the other. It's just, it's more of a driving, motivating factor for.
I don't understand it. How can you base the whole election on President Trump when, again, like they literally said it, we haven't experienced the power of the tariffs yet, right? Like we have tariffs on steel, sure. But did you see the groceries getting more expensive than it was in December? No. When did it get expensive? Last 3 years, during the Liberals government. So what are we talking about President Trump being an issue? President Trump is more like a news headline right now. But the issue is somewhere else. And conservatives are talking about the main issue. They're talking about President Trump and tariffs as well. But that's not the big issue. Like, yes, you're going to negotiate New Deal. Okay, it's going to go away. But why are the groceries so expensive? Why is housing so unaffordable? Why there's no middle class in Canada? Like, those are the questions where President Trump is not an answer. Like, all of this happened before President Trump. And it's just, well, I'm not even surprised that there's a huge group of people that hear on this, like, yeah, President Trump, we need to deal with him. Unfortunately, it's like that in every country. Like, you literally have voters that vote according to who has a better slogan, better quote, or something like that, right? The people who don't look into the policies and stuff. And this is the same case. Like, that's why the Liberals will get quite a lot of votes, because it's all over the news that President Trump is the issue, and Liberals base the whole election on President Trump. But really, if you use the logic, do you think dealing with President Trump will improve your lifestyle? No, it won't. Again, you didn't even feel the tariffs yet. You just read about it. You heard a lot, but that's it. Like, you didn't go to the grocery store and pay 25% more because of the tariffs. No, it didn't affect you. The price of the groceries right now, that's the liberals doing, not President Trump.
Men, and for younger voters, it's affordability, the housing issue, inflation, cost of living. Those are the number one issues. What I'm seeing in the polls is a lot of confusion. The pollsters, there's some general trend lines nationally. There's a lot of up and down, like not agreeing on where things are in regionals where it matters. How are they doing in Ontario? How are the parties doing in BC? And even within some of the age demographics, it's up and down. But because of all this talk about older voters, younger voters, and boomers, there's so many of them. I went and looked at the numbers. Voters or not voters, but people living in Canada. I don't have the same breakdown for voters at this point, but the population over 55 is a little over 13 million, about 38% of the population over 18. The 18 to 55 category, which most polls are showing leaning more towards the conservatives, there's 19 million of them, more than 19 million. So there's a big gap. Problem for Poilievre and the conservatives is older voters more likely to vote.
That's right.
Will there be a big surge in motivated younger voters like we're seeing at the rallies, but people who aren't taking part in polls? Perhaps, and I know a lot of conservatives will hope for that. Hope isn't a strategy, though. What they have to do is what Barack Obama did in 2012 and what Donald Trump did in 2024. Both of those presidential campaigns won because they targeted voters who don't normally show up. And according to Abacus data, people who didn't vote in 2021 and will vote this time are strongly leaning to the conservatives. 46% conservative versus about 33, I believe.
I believe that, again, the people who didn't vote 2021 but will vote this year, yes, conservatives, because these people want a change. They didn't vote in 2021 because they were like, nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to change. But since 2021 till now, like, the situation got so bad. Like, in 2021, it was still kind of real to buy the house. Not now. Like, even in Calgary, the housing is twice as expensive as in 2022. Toronto or Ontario, like, forget about it. Like, the townhouse is over $1 million. How ridiculous is that? And that's not in Toronto, that's in GTA. So it can be probably not even Mississauga, because that's old part, right? But yeah, literally, townhouse costs $1 million in Toronto. And that all happened from pretty much COVID until now, during the Liberals government. So yes, all of the new voters, or most of the new voters, will go to the election only because they're pissed off. And they want change. Not even pissed off, like, they can't afford decent lifestyle. Like, do you really want to live with your parents until you're 32, 35? How is it good for the population? Like, how are you gonna start family when you live with your parents? That's another thing, right? For the future of Canada, this is not good. Like, you can't start family when you're 35 as a girl, because then it's risky and all of that, right? So again, like, I hope all of the young people will show up and vote for conservatives. And I, like, mark my words, if people didn't vote in 2021 and will come to the election right now, it's gonna be for conservatives because they want change. And I just wish more of this older generation understood that as well. And hopefully they will see through all of this, President Trump bad, we are gonna fight President Trump. Hopefully they will see through all of this and actually go to the election and vote according to their logic, and not just because of President Trump.
Liberal. So they need to target that, folks that don't normally get out to the polls. If they do that, we could see a ballot box surprise. We could see it show up in the polling. There's still a lot of time to go, and I know people hate hearing it, but voters are fickle, polls can change, campaigns matter.
All right. Well, one thing that is probably surprising one of the parties that we haven't really talked about because they almost seem to be
Uh-oh,
non-existent is,
NDP.
of course, the NDP, Brian, and some questions swirling around Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, campaigning with a keffiyeh wearing OnlyFans producer. And
What?
it seems like an odd choice of someone to campaign with. We're showing some video here. I I mean it's strange, but I don't necessarily need to focus on that. But the NDP seems to be irrelevant, non-existent, and off the radar
Well,
completely.
I've been saying for a while that they're not speaking to average voters, and this is a problem for them. Last election, they got 18%. Right now, they have collapsed in polling anyway, and they're showing 6 to 8 to 11%, depending on the poll. And most of that support, almost half of it, of former NDP voters, is apparently going to Mark Carney and the Liberals.
Oh my
Is it the
God,
fact that
why?
you're campaigning with someone who, sorry, I did have to look up. This woman is not just doing pretty photos of herself on her OnlyFans page. It's porn. Showing up with someone who does that.
I guess they try to appeal to the younger generation, right? Like, let's be honest, OnlyFans it's probably porn website, but it's still kind of like social media porn website. I don't know. I never checked that, but well, I guess someone goes to Joe Rogan and someone goes to OnlyFans. Like, it's ridiculous. Well, I guess it's better than just be quiet, right? Like, if she's famous or something, some people might hear on that, but it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Who posts a lot and discusses her hatred of Israel.
Okay, so sorry, I have to say it. So you're gonna talk down on President Trump for having one night stand, allegedly one night stand with the porn star, God knows how many years ago, right? And look, now you have NDP just leading the campaign with OnlyFans girl. Yep.
And calling for Netanyahu to be arrested and Israel, an apartheid state. That's a weird demographic to say, oh yeah, let's go for the OnlyFans hating Israel crowd.
My
Or
God.
the two guys wearing dog masks as their fun. I forget what that subset of folks is called.
What?
You need to be talking to wider audiences than that. The NDP campaign has seemed low energy, low budget, which it definitely is. This is not the type of campaign that we saw Jagmeet Singh run the last two elections. It's not what we saw Tom Mulcair run. It's not what we saw Jack Layton run. It is a really strange campaign for them. Are they trying to help Mark Carney win? I mean, they supported the Trudeau Liberals for the past
That's
bunch
right.
of years, so maybe they're just trying to support their friends in this way by just failing at their jobs. It's
I think they just realized that this election is not going to be about them. This election is about liberals and conservatives. And yeah, like I said, if you vote for someone else than conservative, you're pretty much giving the vote to liberals because, yeah, they still have some fans or some people who are die-hard liberals. Most of the time, they don't even know why. But yeah, like obviously this election is not going to be about anyone else, so it's kind of silly that they're not trying to get any votes, because obviously it's about the future of the political party as well, right? But yeah, they have no chance to win, but it's still about the seats, so they should still try harder than the OnlyFans girl.
bizarre. But for all the people saying the conservatives have blown it, they're still polling at 38%. That's normally enough to win a majority in Canada. when you've got the NDP cratering to single digits across the country, and you've got the Bloc Québécois collapsing in Quebec, and all that support going to the Liberals, there's very little that Poilievre can do. He's lost a few points since the beginning of the year, but he has not cratered. It's that everyone else has, and that support has gone to the Liberals. Can he overcome it? Absolutely. The election's not over yet. Mark Carney now has to start talking about something other than Donald Trump to avoid sounding desperate. And my view of Carney, since he's an inexperienced campaigner, is if people aren't afraid, well, the more they hear, the less they're going to be enamored with him. Pierre Poilievre had a great line in Toronto on Wednesday morning. He said, "What's his plan? Because a resume is not a plan."
So true.
Well, will the ballot question still be those horrible tariffs, or is it going to shift back to a time for a change? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and go to thetorontosun.com. You'll find commentary and coverage there you will not find anywhere else.
Well, that's what I was saying for a while now, right? Like the Liberals, I know it's pretty much Democrats, but they're choosing the same strategy like US Democrats. And I really hope it's not going to work for them the same way like it didn't work for Democrats in the US. One interesting thing, Mark Carney has close ties with the Democrats in the US. But yeah, again, like it didn't work for Kamala Harris to just attack Trump. So I really hope that this is going to sound crazy because I never thought I'm going to say that. But I really hope that the Canadians will have enough logic and common sense as Americans to see through this Democrat liberal BS. Because yeah, they don't have any plan for the future. They're just attacking someone. And that's it.